I'm Takeshi Inomata. I'm a professor at the School of Anthropology. I came to U of A in year 2000, and then I study Maya civilization. I do excavation in Guatemala and Mexico. When I was a student, I was interested in different cultures or also distant culture in the ancient time. Maya culture looked really interesting to me. I did undergraduate and master in Japan. In Japan, there's no specific course about the Maya archaeology. So I went to Honduras as a Japanese version of this course. That was my first experience in the area. Then after that, I decided to stay in the area and continue to study Maya archaeology.
I'm Daniela Triadan. I am a full professor here in the School of Anthropology now. I came to the University of Arizona in 2001. I also work in the Maya area together with Dr. Inomata, and I also work actually in the Southwest and have worked here in Arizona as well as in Chihuahua, northern Mexico. I am kind of this cliche person who always wanted to be an archaeologist, and it's true in my case. I was 9 years old when I decided to be an archaeologist. But I didn't want to study European archaeology or work in Europe with classical archaeology. I was more interested in more foreign cultures, so Central America was my focus. The Maya, not so much at the beginning. My advisor was a Mayanist though. And then by a kind of roundabout route, I ended up working for a long time, now almost 30 years in the Maya area. And we're really in our projects looking at how the Maya became the Maya, how they became sedentary, how they became more socially complex. And we work in Guatemala as well as now in Tabasco with a new project. But I've also worked in the Southwest. I actually did my dissertation at a site here in Arizona called Grasshopper Pueblo on the White Mountain Apache Reservation. And having this other perspective from the Southwest has been really helpful to try to understand better what also happened with the Maya.
We got interested in the early part of Maya civilization, how Maya civilization developed. We moved to a nearby site called Ceibal. We excavated early remains of Maya civilization. To do that, we had to dig a pretty deep excavation. So Maya people built over earlier remains. So we go through from later one to earlier one. So to get to the earliest level, sometimes you have to dig more than 10 meters. Then we did get down to the earliest level. We found the earliest Maya ceremonial complex that is known in the area. So that was very exciting to us. And then that tells us that this ceremony and then public gathering and then ritual that's what held there was very important for Maya people. And then that was the major factor that brought people together. And then that was the beginning of Maya civilization. For current project, we are continuing to study the origin of Maya civilization. So Ceibal is on the Passion River, which goes toward Mexico. It meets another river, Usumacinta River, that goes to Mexico. Then on the Mexican side, there's another civilization called Olmec civilization that is known for colossal head and then big center and the other sculptures. Then there has been lots of debate about the relation between Olmec civilization and the Maya civilization. So that's what we wanted to study. So we moved to Mexican side, the area in between of those two civilizations. We used a new technology called Lidar. That's a laser mapping. We put laser equipment on the plane. From there, you shoot lots of these laser shots. Those shots penetrate through canopy of vegetation, give us very precise three-dimensional map of ground level. So through this new technique, we found many new sites. Some of them are very big. The biggest one measure 1.4 kilometer, almost a mile long. We are at the site of Aguada Phoenix in southern Mexico. You see this huge platform and reservoir and causeway. The platform is so big that you cannot see the shape from the ground, but airborne laser mapping revealed the rectangular shape measuring 1.5 kilometers. Now let's go see the excavation. We are excavating this large platform. You can see layers of many floors that were built about 3,000 years ago. This enormous construction marked the beginning of Maya civilization. Remarkable thing is that nobody knew about this huge site before us.
Well, we have been working together since 1991. We actually met in the Guatemalan jungle, so I've been directing both of these projects together. My dissertation project, as I said, was in the Southwest, so I came with a slightly different perspective into these projects. But then we developed out of Aguateca, when we were looking at this late collapse in parentheses, we switched to Ceibal, as Takeshi was saying. Now we're both actually in Tabasco looking at these sites that are potentially between what's been seen as the Maya heartland and the Gulf Coast of Mexico. So we're really interested in these interactions with Olmec people. And we're starting to see some very surprising things. And I think they are so surprising because they're new sites that we are kind of starting to rewrite Maya history, actually, and the origins of how the Maya formed. These are examples of the earliest Maya ceramics that were ever made. They date before 800 BC, so more than 2,000 years ago, almost 2,800 years ago. And we have different slips already, so they do different surfaces, different forms. And what was interesting in the new project is actually that we found a lot of commonalities, so ceramics that look very similar to what we found in Ceibal, even though the sites are almost 200 kilometers apart. And the new sites are much closer to the coast of Mexico and closer to the Olmec area. But the ceramics are very similar, so we actually recognized them from the older project, which was surprising. And then we also found a new type, though, ceramics that have two colors, which is also surprising because we haven't seen this before that early for this particular area. And so we actually gave them a new name. And one of the things that we're doing is we're using these ceramics for dating because we have a nice chronology that we established in Ceibal. So we actually have a fairly tight control when these things change. They change in form, they change in outside decorations, and they change in sometimes also in the inside in the way how they make the ceramics. And one of the things I do is I actually try to figure out where they were made and where they ended up. And this is why I do something called neutron activation. So I take samples and then I work with colleagues in the Smithsonian and we analyze the actual chemical elementary composition of the pastes of the actual bodies of these ceramics, and then we try to figure out whether they were made locally or whether they came from somewhere else. So this is important because we're also looking at interactions and how people were connected with other areas and other people. And it now looks that our ideas that we started to form in Ceibal are getting reinforced or partially confirmed with the new findings that we're having in Tabasco, where we're finding these very large ceremonial platforms that were built by people who were probably not yet fully sedentary.
I think it's just very special to take this object in hand. That's something people made almost 3,000 years ago. You almost feel those presence of those people.
Archaeology is special because it's the only discipline that looks at the human past over the long term. Nobody else does it. History looks at specific areas, sociology looks at something else. So archaeologists have a very unique long-term perspective on human development. And I think this is very important because I think archaeology can really teach us a lot about the future. Because when we look at how societies developed and failed in the past, hopefully this will give us some ideas in how we can avoid some of these mistakes that people have been repeatedly doing in different parts of the world, right? None of the ancient complex societies survived. They all somehow disintegrated and collapsed. There's also for archaeologists the whole private sector where they work and where a lot of North American people who are concentrating on North American archaeology work, and this is called the cultural resource management sector, where we have private firms who are actually hiring archaeologists. They're all about doing archaeology, especially when we have big either state or federally funded projects, because there's an Antiquities Act in the US, and so you have to actually assess what the impact of building projects are potentially on the cultural heritage of the state or of the US in general.
So it's not just archaeology, but students can study cultural anthropology, linguistic anthropology, and then physical anthropology. Students get that very important perspective about human culture, history, and then society, which can be applied to many things. In business, many companies are looking at this question of human relations, and then relation between different culture, and then relation to past. You can also go to government or NGO, government, have these diplomatic relations. These cultural perspectives become very important. So there are many applications of anthropology.